Total War Saga Troy is set to release on Steam after a year of being an Epic exclusive. Alongside with it comes the Mythos DLC, a mode completely focused on the mythological side of the story. It also features free LC historical mode, the third mode now in Troy that takes away every bit of the mythos to a degree and gives us the closest thing to a historical game that we'll see for, I expect, at least another year or two. Hello everybody, this is Havoc, and today I'm bringing you a review on A Total War Saga Troy, addressing the upcoming Mythos DLC and free LC historical mode. To be 100% honest and upfront about this video, the only reason I'm making it is as a response to my lack of desire to cover this game with much effort. It's not that either set of content is bad, but there are larger pieces of work here that left me unsatisfied and very frustrated, and I want to make that publicly known for the community to think about as I go through this review. As with any early access content I received from the developers, even though I was given a code to this game for free from Creative Assembly, and that's always greatly appreciated, it will not hold me back from how I feel about the game. So, let's dive into my Mythos historical review for A Total War Saga Troy. Beginning with the Mythos DLC, this paid slice of content takes the half-baked myth-truth idea of the game and goes fully to the left, diving headfirst into mythology deep enough that you have a hard time wondering why the hell they ever thought about straddling that line between myth and reality was a smart idea. Turning to full mythos in this DLC works out great, and it feels natural, like it belonged here the entire time. And to be quite frank, I think it should have been there the entire time. There are no more men with bullheads or regular cav units that are to be interpreted as blending humans and animals together. No, here there be monsters. Centaurs are fully centaurish, actual half men, half horse. Harpies are flying around screeching their cries. There are one-eyed humanoids desperately searching for gold, and infected souls dripping with poison. If it's not fully human, it's a fully mythological creature or their minions, and that's just the base units. In your journey to take on the Trojans or the Danaans, you will craft an army to embark on an expedition to capture and employ one of three big boy monsters, the Griffin, the Cerberus, or the Hydra. In a great narrative event line, you'll lead this army to finally take on your monster of choice. Ultimately, this fight is rather underwhelming, not unlike your typical quest battle from Warhammer 2. Waves of troops arrive until Boss Man finally shows up and you take them on. Something a little more unique would have been nice, so know that if you played Warhammer 2 at all, that expedition battle is nothing new. The best part about this DLC is that just because there are similar units to the Warhammer series, it doesn't mean that all these units were just copy-pasted from Warhammer 2 into Troy. Sure, maybe the animations themselves, which I am completely okay with, but outside of that, these creatures feel tied to our Earth, not in some fantasy world. Dark earthy tones, grounded textures, and movement, everything about them makes them unique to this game, and this game only, which honestly was a huge concern of mine before I got access. How else could you justify charging full price if the full price work wasn't done? That fear was gone the second I faced all the Mythos creatures in the game. Sophia put in their work, and they did it well. Creatures aren't the only things that changed in the DLC though. The campaign and battle maps have been heavily tweaked, as monuments and massive statues litter the campaign, and the remnants of titans and mountain-sized temples dot the landscape during battle. The gods are much more tied into the story as well, with a handful of actual battle abilities able to be used during battles. They're even in the skies, looking down at us mere mortals as we squabble amongst ourselves. The vibes I got from Mythos are spot on, and very much enjoyable as I played. But what about the historical mode? To the surprise of undoubtedly most of the community, the announcement of the Mythos DLC was followed up by a historical mode, one that came for free with the game regardless of your Mythos purchase. Historical mode, as mentioned in the intro, strips away everything related to the mythology side of the saga with the exception of the gods and their benefits. No fancy filter to give off that Mythos effect, no monumental features across the maps, the skies are devoid of supernatural beings, and most importantly, no single entity units. Much like the records modes in 3 Kingdom, may that game rest in peace, Troy's historical mode surrounds the character with bodyguards, and in a very cool step forward, allows you to upgrade your bodyguard units as your general levels up and can unlock them. Therefore, when it comes to battles in the historical mode, things become much simpler, and while features of Mythos remain, such as some general buffs and abilities, it really boils down to traditional battlefield Bronze Age tactics, which is a nice respite from the other Troy modes. So far, so good, right? Historical mode sounds amazing for those of us who have been craving a good Bronze Age Total War, or just a pure historical game in general, considering the last true historical game was Thrones of Britannia. No monsters, nothing crazy, just some good fun playing the way things should be, right? Unfortunately, it's not really amazing. Troy's historical mode suffers from the same issues as its predecessor in Three Kingdoms, and it's that historical mode is a feature-removing game mode only. The defining feature of Troy's historical mode is removing monsters, removing single entity units, and apparently removing color saturation, I guess because history has repeatedly proven to be quite colorless. Outside of general bodyguards, there are no additional mechanics to this mode, and this causes the mode to feel, like Records mode in Three Kingdoms, simply tacked on and inferior to the real product being sold. It's like getting the generic off-brand cereal at the store. Yeah, sure, it looks like Captain Crunch. It ticks the boxes of what you're wanting to a degree, but it tastes a little off, like they used expired ingredients or maybe some leftover byproducts to make it possible. You see what it could be, but you know that what you're getting just won't completely satiate you. For me personally, and this is personally, it quickly got old and rather boring. There's really no other way to put it. It was indeed cool playing without all the Mythos or quasi-Mythos units. I just couldn't really push forward with any real desire to get into the campaign, as it were. It also doesn't help that the same issues from the base game remain. The AI's ability to generate large armies quickly, buffs to their economy thanks to difficulty settings, an inability to generate a good deal of happiness in your settlements, and the constant barter requests from the AI too. Good God, that has to be the most annoying feature in this game. To quote one famous Cody Bonds, "It's a historical fact that few people realize that Troy's horrible bartering system is indeed what led to the Bronze Age collapse, and it could not be more true." Now, that's totally just me. You may be like a kid on Christmas morning with this historical side and enjoy the holy living heck out of it and render this entire segment irrelevant. But to me, it's not a real historical game. The mode feels incomplete, and while perhaps well-intentioned, left me less than satisfied and more than a bit nostalgic for an actual 100% only historical game full of its own unique features and gameplay mechanics. Now, amidst this awkward juxtaposition of Mythos and historical mode is an actual new mechanic. It's sometimes hard to remember that Saga titles are supposed to be grounds for experimental features, and administration is what we get with this update, which applies to all three game modes. Administration is set to replace supply lines, where it currently causes a massive increase in upkeep for all units as soon as you create another army. It's a poorly implemented system to prevent player army bloat that's frustrated most of the community for a very long time, as it cripples your economy by simply recruiting the hero to an empty army. Now with administration, every building and unit that you create has an associated admin burden cost, representing a much more gradual and realistic idea of your empire's growth. As admin burden hits certain levels, that's where you'll see recruitment and upkeep costs increase, which is the negative. There is a positive to increasing it though, including a reduction time enacting new royal decrees, an increased recruitment capacity faction-wide, and an increase in your city's faction influence. It's the balance of positives and negatives that has a larger appeal to me, and when combined with the mechanics function of that gradual increase, it allows the player to expand at their own pace, including, most importantly, army growth. Having those tiers of administration also gives the players avenues of expansion and player choice. Do I focus on developing my infrastructure at the potential cost of having a smaller army? Or do I forego a bit of empire building to create that second army so I have defenders to cover my vulnerable areas, of which there are several in this game. While I haven't tested it at the higher levels, defer to my previous issues, Administration seems like a great new feature that goes miles above supply lines to create a layer of depth to Total War games, something that's been desperately needed for a while, and also something that I hope gets refined and implemented into future titles. It's now down to the messy piece of this review. Do you buy this or do you not? Here's my issue. Total War Saga Troy and its truth behind the myth idea was simply poorly executed. It was an attempt to satiate the entire community while ultimately satisfying very, very few. We knew that CA would need to do something drastic to appeal to a Steam launch, and I had my bets on this full mythological rework from the get-go. But I thought it would be that, a rework, an overhauled update that either removed the truth behind the myth entirely or appealing to the community by adding it in as free DLC. Instead, they added Mythos as a DLC, of which you have to purchase the base game if you want it all on Steam. And therein lies my dilemma. The base game is just not worth the purchase, not even with the savings you get from bundling content. I do not enjoy the truth behind the myth at all anymore. I enjoyed the Mythos DLC a lot, but it is pretty dang pricey at $25, especially when the base game and this DLC combined is $53. You can just see CA double dipping here for a quick cash grab across both Epic and Steam, dropping the price of the base game to near the same amount as the DLC to make that bundle more appealing. Considering that Epic paid the development costs entirely for initial release, and now that I played a chunk across all 3 game modes, I would have recommended Saga Troy had the DLC just been released as a free update to the base game and then released on Steam for something like $40 or less, knowing that a majority of Steam users probably would never touch the truth behind the myth game mode. But it just seems a bit scummy, making you pay for what is now essentially just a game mode with the base game, then making you pay for another game mode, while then turning around and making a third game mode free. I guess it's a good old-fashioned buy 2 get 1 free discount deal, but it really screws over the Steam preferred players who want in on any aspect of this game, and I honestly have a very hard time justifying that anyone buy the game with the way this is set up. I don't really want to dawdle here anymore, so this will be the end of my review on the current state of A Total War Saga Troy surrounding the release on Steam and the Mythos DLC. If you enjoyed it, or just simply agreed with my assessment of the game, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on bell notifications. Let me know your thoughts on the subject at hand. I would love to see your comments down below. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Havoc, and I'll see you all in the next video.